And we are back with season 2 of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I am your host, Ronnie Harder, and I am joined by my two guys, Contown and Matt. Contown, how are you?
Doing great. Uh, Spring has sprung. Getting ready for all the fun off-season talk. It feels like it's we're heading into summer here, starting to get some season win totals coming out, get some early Heisman favorites, conference outlooks. It's feels like we're starting to ramp up. There's another football season.
Yeah, I saw Heisman favorites earlier today, in fact, oddly enough, and I was like, that's way too early to really know who's the Heisman favorite right now. Even the top 25, they did the FPI thing. They had like Auburn 10th. I was like, yeah, no. I don't even
I
know if
saw
Auburn's going to have a 500 record.
I saw
Um,
Auburn and
Texas was up
Texas.
there.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh was number
Pitt
9. That was
Pitt's gonna
insane.
lose a first round quarterback and be
Yeah,
better. I don't know
lose their
about that.
OC and yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. Matt, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Actually had a buddy, shout out Michael Wiltsey, sent me a text about that Texas stat or their FPI, and he said in the last 10 years they have finished higher once than their
Mm.
preseason ranking in 10
Was that the year they
years.
beat Georgia?
He didn't say what year it was, but he
Mm,
he's
Probably.
been he's been ranting
probably
on
was.
this Texas train for a while that they get overhyped every year and
Overhyped
uh,
every year, alcoholic coach. I mean, like, come on now. Like,
I w-
alcohol.
we're not doing this.
I would love to know as one of those like super specific stats that like ESPN runs, how many teams have lost to Kansas in the previous year and then finished top 10?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it was so bad that you gave their fullback a freaking deal at Applebee's. Like, Jesus, man. I don't get it. They get hyped up every single year. If you look at their roster, their O line's terrible, their defensive line's not that good. So yeah, they got a ton of talent, skill positions, but everywhere else, in the trenches, I'm not too confident in Texas doing that. But this is not a Texas podcast, even though I'm wearing a Texas sweatshirt right now. This is the Hail to Michigan podcast. And we want to start off with the spring game that happened. What was it, 2 weeks ago now? Was it 2 weekends ago? Yeah, April 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
So it's April 14th. So 2 weekends ago, I wanted to dive in. Let's start with the offense first. Dive into some of the things that we liked and some of the things we didn't like. I am personally going to start with things that I didn't like, and I'm going to start with Cade McNamara at quarterback. I know it was just a spring. He didn't play that much, but from what I saw was a little concerning. A lot of the issues that he had last year kind of came back this year. He struggled against the blitz. He was too slow. Underthrew a lot. He overthrew a lot. He wasn't accurate. The arm strength really wasn't there. It was just kind of concerning for me. Um, Content, I'm gonna start with you. What did you think of Cade and his performance in the spring game, and do you think it's concerning?
Yeah, they all came out afterwards and said, we're trying to keep the offense bland. We're not going to show anything, and yeah, I think that's, I think that's true. But I think even in the attempts you saw from Cade, he just didn't look super crisp. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the play call is. You still want to see the quarterback that's your returning starter from a championship team. Look the part, look on time and accurate. And we didn't really see that. He was I want to say 3 for 7 was his final line for uh, I don't know, not many yards, and I think the longest play was a little check down to Corum. He missed a couple deep shots. It's always hard in the spring when the offense is divided. You're playing behind kind of a scrambled together offensive line and wide receiver core, and they are in fact trying to keep the play calling to the most basic concepts in the playbook, but yeah, Cade didn't look super crisp, and I don't think anyone would have guessed, given who Michigan returns and who Michigan doesn't return, that the defense would be on par with the offense at this point in the offseason. But that's what they looked like in the spring game, especially the secondary against the passing game. So, yeah, kind of underwhelming day from Cade. I'm not overly concerned by it, but it certainly didn't look like a guy who was going to be able to, for sure, fend off a 5-star challenger.
Yeah, I think that's underwhelming. I think was probably a good word to use there. I just wanted to see more from him. I thought this was a decent opportunity, especially kind of jumping. He was on both teams, the maize and the blue team. I thought it was a decent opportunity for him to kind of calm down some of the talk. If he plays a really good spring game, what us fans see, that it's a little bit more confident going into the season, like from the fan base, and kind of what he showed out there was just kind of like left me wanting more. I was hoping that to see him having taken the next step, and maybe he has in practice, and that was just one off day, like you're saying, with the mixed units that didn't look that good. But I was kind of hoping for him to have a pretty good game. I thought this was a good opportunity for him, and after the game, my reaction was kind of like, okay, well, the quarterback competition is definitely still alive, based off of today. So,
yeah, I mean, look, we've got an easy schedule this year, or easier than past years, obviously, and there's a ton of talent, especially in the wide receiver room, the running back room, the offensive line, tight end. The whole offense itself is going to be great this year, but that quarterback is still a question with Cade, and obviously we know what JJ is capable of, but we didn't see him because of his shoulder injury, and he's going to start throwing again on Monday. But I don't want to waste a year on offense on Cade just because he led us to the Big Ten championship last year. I mean, respect him for that, thank him for that, but for this team to take that next level, they need that quarterback position to really take that next level as well. And JJ's your best option there. And I just don't see it with Cade.
Would you say that, based on the spring game and what we were able to see, that the winners of the quarterback position in the spring was everyone except for Cade?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
we
think so,
saw,
except for
yes.
Cade and Alan Bowman.
yeah, I mean, we saw extended Davis Warren action.
He looked good too.
He looked good. We saw Alex Orji, who looked like a really capable runner, and
He's a tank out there.
Yes,
and
he is.
by JJ not playing, everyone is just going to continue to think highly of JJ, and there's going to be a loud contingency that thinks JJ should start, and
Absolutely.
I'm part of that as well. So it kind of seems like, and maybe Cade's kind of doesn't have a lot of room to go up from where people currently perceive him, right? Like Cade is kind of who he is at this point, I think, especially in the fans' minds. But yeah, I don't think anyone is really leaving spring with an improved opinion of Cade relative to the rest of the room.
And real quick, Matt, before you go, I just want to give a quick shout out to, I think his name's T. Weber on the Michigan message boards, and he got a lot of slack and a lot of shit on the message boards for pointing some of these, deficiencies out from Cade during the spring game. And he might have been overboard with the stuff that he was posting, but the gist and like the overall point of what he was trying to post was correct. Like you could tell Cade was struggling, and it was the same exact stuff that we saw from him last year that we didn't like, and we're begging for JJ McCarthy to come out. And I get it, like he's successful, he's a great kid. Once again, led us to the Big Ten championship and to the playoff. But at some point, when you return a team with this much talent, with this much experience, you got to have that guy that can take it to the next level. Like that's what happened with Alabama. They had the Blake Sims and Jake Coker years, and then they went ahead and got Tua, and then they Bryce Young and so forth. Like you need guys like that on your squad to be able to take your team to the next level. And JJ's that guy, while Cade isn't.
Yeah, I think there's two different ways to look at it. I think from, within the team, what he did last year means everything. He's their guy, he's their
Absolutely.
leader, like he was the starter, within the team. From a fan's Like
Right. Yeah.
from a fan's perspective, you're evaluating it the exact way that you're saying, Ronnie. Like who can take us to that next level? And maybe it is still him, but from a fan's perspective, last year doesn't mean anything in the quarterback race. So, you know, from that standpoint, it's like who can take us to that next level? And maybe it is still Cade, but I just think sooner or later that the talent level of JJ, which I think is undeniably higher than Cade,
Much higher.
I think that's going to turn into consistent play, and it's going to be impossible for it not to turn over. In my opinion, like I said, from the team's perspective, I get it. Like that's their guy; they're riding with him, and I'm sure they love JJ too. But
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no denying his intangibles. I mean, he's a great leader that shows during the press conferences, post game interviews on the field. Like we know what this guy's capable of as a leader. It's just his physical traits just isn't there. And I remember when I sent you guys a tweet that said he was gonna go work with Jordan Palmer, who's this, big time quarterback guru now, and he trains a bunch of the top prospects in the draft. And I remember Contown saying, like, okay, is he going to help him build more speed, get a better arm, and so forth? It's like, yeah, I mean, that's really true, because everything that you want Cade to be, JJ is just that, and he's much younger, and he's already got the experience, and he's played in the big time games, and he's shown that he can perform well in those games, and the ceiling is just extremely high.
Well, and from like the coach's perspective too, right? Like what Cade did as much as last year, as much as you love it, and as much as you admire him, as a person, as a teammate, etc., that's not that's not going to win you any games in 2022, right? Like the Penn State game last year is not going to win you the Penn State game this year. So like you can't make decisions based on last year's performance or who was good enough last year. You have to pick the guy that's going to win you every single football game this year, the most football games possible this year, right?
yep,
And you're talking about a team that's going to
Yeah,
have probably some regression on defense. Like we can
a
say
little
like
bit.
even
Yeah,
if it's a little, it's probably going to be some. We're going to lose 3-ish first round draft picks,
they will
right? We're going to
definitely
change
be lacking
coordinators.
in pass rushing compared to last year.
So
So
you've got like this different equation set up of like you're to maximize your wins, right? You're going to ratchet the defense coefficient down a little bit, so you have to turn the offense up a little bit, right? You might have to win some shootouts
yep.
this year. Is Cade the best option for that? Maybe he is, but I, nothing to this point has made me believe that his ceiling has gone up, whereas we know JJ's ceiling is starting off higher than Cade's is. So
yeah,
how close can JJ get to his ceiling? I still think that JJ is going to pass him, whether it's
I
in
think
fall
so too.
camp or the first couple games. But
Yeah, and I do think there is a way for Cade this year to improve and maintain despite his lesser physical ability than what JJ has. I mean, with the talent around him, I think there's certainly potential to be that kind of point guard type guy that distributes the ball around well. The running game should be good again, and not that doesn't make mistakes to the point where like last year, we were almost too conservative with that. It worked, don't get me wrong, but to where, he can just distribute the ball. Maybe the offense isn't as flashy as it would be with JJ, but he can, with how many playmakers there are, like just get the ball out there consistently and let them do the work. I do think there is an avenue for Cade to stay, but I agree with most of what you guys are saying. It just ceiling is higher with JJ.
Yeah, that avenue's there, I think, because the schedule is easier than last year's, so to speak. I thought last year was gonna be what we think of Cade this year, where we weren't sure about the defense to start the season, so we kind of need that one guy to step up and really score points for Michigan. And we wanted JJ to be the starter out the gate. Well, at least some of us did. But that wasn't the case, obviously, and that was helped out with the run game and the great offensive line play. And look, I don't want to turn this into a Cade McNamara bash fest, but like you guys said, I think JJ gives us the best possible chance at contending for a national championship. I don't want to say win one because we'll get into that before the season starts. I think Alabama is the clear favorite right now to win the national championship, but at least a shot to get there. I think JJ's the guy.
Yeah, I mean, to the schedule point, I think Cade could win 10 or 11 games with this schedule, but
I think so
I
too.
I think the chances of winning 12 and then 13 are pretty low with
I think
Cade
Cade,
versus
not
they're
to cut you
better
off,
with JJ.
I think Cade wins 10 games, and I think JJ wins 11. I think Cade loses to Iowa. At
Yeah,
Iowa,
like
if he's a
uh,
starter.
Iowa returns a good chunk on defense.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's in Kinnick. They're gonna hope that it's a night game. Iowa
Yep.
is, so like you're gonna need to be as dynamic as possible on offense, probably to even scratch out like 28 in
Yep.
Kinnick at night, right? So yeah, that's a worrisome game. Probably either way, but it's more worrisome if it's gonna try to get into a rock fight with Cade.
Yeah. One last point on Cade. Go ahead, Matt, before we move on.
Yeah, I just think that I agree with that, and I think even separating the game total like number doesn't, you know, I think they both could win equal amount of games, but when they're playing that top tier of team, just like we saw against Georgia, I mean, JJ wasn't perfect against them, but God, it just felt like they had a chance when he was in there, and I didn't feel that way when Cade was in the game. It just Cade had to be perfect when he was in there, and JJ doesn't. There's more margin for error with JJ
It's
than
the
there is
running
with
game.
Cade, just because the talent, the running game, the talent
Yeah.
difference. There's just more margin for error there, and if we're gonna go, if Michigan's gonna go to Columbus and have a chance, like who can go toe to toe with Stroud? I don't think you
It's
can count on
JJ.
the defense shutting them down as much as they did last year. I don't think you can count on the running game just completely bulldozing them as they did last year. I think the running game will still be very good, but you're going to have a guy that's going to make the throws. And even in the Ohio State game last year, JJ made one of the 4 big throws of the game.
Yeah, that one to Roman Wilson.
Yeah.
On the
I
sideline.
mean,
That was
inch perfect pass that was set up by the run threat of JJ,
the run
right?
threat. Yep.
Yep.
Little.
Yep.
So
Faked the decorum and ran outside, and JJ gives us the best shot at what Michigan is aiming for, in my opinion. So, but let's move on to our next topic, and I want to talk about the one guy on offense that really stood out to you during the game, and I'll start out with the guy I thought stood out the most for me was Khalil Mullings. He's a two-way player now. He was at linebacker his first 2 years at Michigan, but now he's a running back, and he played running back in high school, and it really showed the other day how well he was running the ball. If you look at his high school film, he was a really good runner, and then it really showed during the spring game his ability to run to the outside. That big run that he had for like 20 yards where he bounced to the outside looked really good. I know he's got good speed. He's obviously really big. I think he's like 6'2", 220. I don't want to say for sure. I'd have to look at the roster, but I thought he really looked good as a runner the other day.
He's listed at he's 6'1", 236. And I know that because I was just arguing with someone that he's just as big as Haskins the other day.
So I was completely off. Sounds good.
Yeah, someone was trying to tell me that Haskins was way bigger, and I'm like, actually,
no.
Mullins is listed bigger. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know, but I remember his list weight because of that.
He's built like a rock, though.
He is.
Khalil.
He just looks natural.
What'd you think of Khalil?
Yeah, that was gonna be him, and the combination of him and Tavi Dunlap.
Dunlap surprised me.
Yeah, Dunlap was gonna be mine.
No. Yeah, the combination of those two, I think people were a little concerned, and even the coaches targeted Train him from Arizona State as kind of a power back, and I think even the coaches were kind of concerned about losing that aspect of the offense And I think those guys kind of answered the bell there. I think Tavi, I think, had close to, if not over 100 yards. I thought he looked good. I think he'll continue to grow. I don't think he's at his ceiling yet. I think vision will continue to improve the more reps he gets. And I think Mullins looked like he fit right in.
Yeah,
I thought his
he was
vision,
good in high school.
and the one thing I worried about from high school to college, like it's a big adjustment as a running back, and when you've already
Absolutely.
bulked, to be a linebacker and stuff, it's like it's kind of a tough transition a few years in, and he seemed like he had been there. He seemed like he'd been working there. It may just be package plays for a short time, but I think if it came down to it and they had to count on him or even Tavi to carry the load for a game, I think they would be fine. I think the run game would be all right. So I was very impressed with both the combination of those two. The power backs, I think, answered a big question that I had. Who was going to fill that void, and I think it's filled by both guys, really.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, fully agree. Like I said, Tavi was gonna be my guy. I think I don't know if you said this, Matt, but Tavi's listed at 222, I think. So both are giving you the power
size.
element. Yeah, Mullings, we know he's got some contact courage, playing mostly linebacker. That even sounds like a little like Haskins, right? He dabbled at linebacker early at Michigan, but Dunlap impressed me with vision and balance. Broke a couple, at least one big chunk run. It's funny. Last off season, I think we all anticipated Dunlap to redshirt, just given the kind of historic depth that Michigan had. One of the better running back recruits we've ever landed was third string last year. So, but everyone expected Dunlap to redshirt. But I mentioned to you guys that I just got some info from Blake Corum's dad last offseason, and he made it a point to mention Dunlap is going to be a very good back. So I think certainly some concern about that room losing a guy like Haskins, but the spring game was encouraging for depth purposes there. I think Michigan's in good shape again in the running back room.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern with losing Haskins would be who's going to step up as that elite pass blocker in the backfield. I think that was a really underrated part of Haskins' game is his ability to pass block. And I'm not sure if Corum's that guy. I'm not sure if Edwards is that guy. Dunlap, Mulling, you haven't really seen it yet. So I'm not really sure who that guy would be to step up in that role.
Yeah, Haskins is kind of a unicorn in that he was both the bruiser and maybe the most elusive of the three backs. Like you can make people miss in a phone booth. You could jump over people. We saw a ton, and he could run through. Like you're just not going to get the Haskins skill set in one back. Question is, can you get some of it back in a third back outside of what you already know you're getting with like Corum and Edwards? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a to be determined type of role. They can always mitigate that with the pass catchers that they have at running back. I mean, you send Donovan Edwards out and he's burning people in the pass game, then it's going to be a little difficult to bring a blitz and need the running back to be too involved with the protection. So
that's a good point.
They can mitigate that if they don't find somebody that they're comfortable with. But I thought Blake last year, even the few times that I noticed him in pass blocking, I thought he identified well. I mean, he's always going to have a little bit of a size disadvantage.
Absolutely. Height-wise.
Yeah, height-wise, right. Yeah, that's why I said a little bit. Like, he's still bulky, but height-wise, he's going to have a little bit of a disadvantage. But if you can identify early, I mean, it's the main key. Just get to the right guy. You don't have to block him for 5 seconds. Just get to him, and be in the right spot. So I think that'll come. I think Mike Hart was one of the best at that. So I think he's and it showed last year with how the guy, all three kind of performed in that aspect. I think he can really coach that portion of the running back job.
Mike Hart praise from Matt. You love to see it.
Hey, we talked about it today. He is one of the top three for me, favorite Wolverines of all time. So
absolutely, same here.
And that's why I have high expectations for him as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other offensive guys that stood out to you before we move over to the defense?
Yes. And this stood out in kind of a weird way. But I remember this from like previous spring games. Eric All and Luke Schoonmaker being pulled almost immediately was a sign of we have two freaks and we don't need to see any more from them.
I thought this was going to be a Bredesen love fest.
Oh no. My future fullback, Max Bredesen. But no, when guys are just lightly involved in the spring game and they've been contributors in the past, I think that's a good sign that the coaches think they have some real players there. Harbaugh could not have spoke more glowingly about those two guys. He thinks they're both going to be high draft picks. So yeah, they stood out in a weird way, but kind of the quick pull on the tight ends was kind of a sign of, hey, we know we got something here. And I thought that was a good sign. And then I was also impressed with Jeff Percy. I thought he kind of hung in. This is getting a little bit, into the backups a little bit, but I thought this was a big spring for him to kind of determine whether or not he could be he's the heir apparent to Ryan Hayes. And I
agreed.
I think he looked good in the spring game. And there's been good reports from him in practice as well. So
Harbaugh's a big fan of him too.
Yeah. Yep. So I was happy with what I saw there, and it made me feel more comfortable about that spot in the future. Maybe not a this year issue, but
yeah,
I feel more comfortable with that with Jeff Percy moving forward.
Yep. What about you, Contown? Any other standouts for you?
I think Matt hit on a lot of good points. We kind of touched on him a little, but I would say Alex Orji is QB4 right now. Even if it means the play calling is different, less.
Could be 3.
He could be 3.
Yeah. Honestly,
but I was impressed with the running ability I saw from him. We kind of knew that was his skill set, but it was good to see him out on the field. And, he looks like he's got a little of the dog in him. He was giving Jaden Hood the business on multiple runs.
What was that? They have like a little rivalry going?
He stiff arms him into the ground and then gets right in his face when he got up. So
it happened a couple times during the scrimmage.
I know we were texting during the game, and I said, Alex Orji's gonna make Jaden Hood transfer.
Yeah.
But he looks like no bad energy there. But no, Orji looks good. It looks like he brings a skill set that certainly Matt Weiss will know how to use. The offensive coaching staff generally will know how to use, and can be a little bit different. Maybe he can be a package guy if JJ's healthy. I'm not really a fan of like using your fourth quarterback, but to just do like wildcat or obvious option stuff. Yeah. But if God forbid JJ is, this is lingering injury for JJ, Orji at least adds some mobility and some of the more dynamic skill set to the room. And I think it's notable that of the 2 freshmen, because both freshman quarterbacks are early enrollees, Orji's the one you saw. So pretty noteworthy. I would say he's at least ahead of Alan Bowman at this point, and
Yeah,
then depending
not ahead
on
of Warren.
yeah, but
Yeah,
it's good. Like it's his first semester of college football, and he's he's probably in the top 4 of the depth
yeah,
chart
getting some
in a
run.
decent room. Yeah, so
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna point out Olu. He was moving guys along the offensive line, and that was gonna be an obvious one. I think he was one of the finalists for the what was it, the Remington Trophy last year. So
mhm.
I have no worries about him. But dude, I was so impressed with Davis Warren. I really was. I think he has the ability to be a really good backup quarterback from Michigan in case JJ wins the job and Cade's just like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna go elsewhere and just get my chance to start this year. And I thought he showed a lot of promise. This was a kid that didn't he have leukemia or something, and it
Yep.
really was a detriment to his development, obviously in high school on the field, but yeah, he showed a lot of good things. And I was telling you guys, he looks a lot like Keaton Slovis out there. Now that was high praise for a guy that was mentioned as a possible first round pick last year at quarterback, but I don't know, man. I really liked what I saw from Warren, and he just impressed me a lot. So I would say Davis Warren was my guy that
Yeah,
impressed the most.
I'm glad you brought him up because we uh, definitely should not have gone all the way through the offense without mentioning him.
Yeah.
A little fact about the Cade transferring thing:
Hmm.
we have to make it. Um, was it 15? It's like 17 more days. He can't just decide in fall camp if he loses to. I mean, he could leave, but
But he would have to sit out.
yeah, you can't play in the next year unless
Interesting.
it's like May 2nd is the cutoff.
I thought it was July 1st.
So I thought so too, and that's what I had heard previously. But Cover 3 has said when they have Bud Elliott on there, I think he'd correct us if it was wrong, but maybe not. They've said like 3 times in the past week or so that we're going to see a lot of transfers here in the next 2 weeks because May 2nd is the cutoff for
Oh wow.
Oh wow. Okay.
when you can be eligible for the next year. I may be wrong.
So
Either way, if it's not fall camp, like I doubt that if we get through the early part of summer, um, and it's not like they're going to name a starter at the early part of summer. So um, I would think that you got through spring now. I would think both quarterbacks are in for this season. So I
yeah.
think that's a little bit of a good thing for the depth there. But yeah, Davis Warren, great story.
Yeah, that's huge.
Looks like a good
So
player. So
I just Googled it and it says, okay, so last year the deadline was July 1st, but in future years, meaning this year, the deadline will be May 1st.
bingo.
So
There you go.
a couple weeks. I mean, it's not too much longer, like he I mean, he's not going to transfer unless something crazy happens with JJ in the next 2 weeks, but he's not going to transfer. So he's stuck at Michigan for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's how you want to categorize it. He's stuck here.
Yeah, he's stuck here. Exactly. I mean, that's he's not going to want to sit behind JJ. I mean, you know how competitive he is, but I mean, he's got no choice.
But
JJ's just the
if
better option.
and if I were like advising him, I would tell him the same, right? Like if JJ wins the job, he's going to be running more. He's
Yeah,
already been hurt a lot of this offseason. Like we haven't made it through many seasons with the starting quarterback not getting hurt at all.
absolutely.
So
Yeah, and that's hard for
it
any team to
yeah,
keep anybody healthy.
of course.
Yeah,
So
we need them both.
absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree with that. Let's move over to the defensive side of the football. We'll talk about the guys that really impressed us. Contown, we'll start with you. Who's the one guy on defense that really impressed you?
So I think a
And
lot of
if you
people are
take
going to
my
talk.
pick, I'm gonna hate you.
I'm gonna try not to. I think a lot of people are going to talk about one new defensive back that I think Ronnie's going to talk about. But honestly, DJ Turner impressed me, and I think
He did.
he ended last year on a really good handful of games, ascending player, as Jim Harbaugh would say. But he seems like a guy that could be like a first or second team all-conference player for Michigan this fall.
Yep.
And Michigan, it really seems like we're due to hit on a corner. It's been a few years now since we've had
Yeah.
the Jordan Lewis types,
Yeah.
Ambry
Well,
Thomas
Ambry
when
was
he was
supposed to be that
healthy,
guy.
right?
Yeah, but he got
He had
hurt.
some health struggles, but
Yep.
when he was on the field, he was great.
Hmm.
Levert, like just your classic Detroit corners, or David Long,
Yeah.
your excellent string of corners that Michigan had. Like, we're due to hit on another one, and it seems like DJ can be that guy. He's got great technique. He's in perfect phase on the deep stuff. Clemens and CJ couldn't get past him on a couple go
Yeah.
routes in the game. He looks good, so knock on wood, good health. He seems like a all conference guy, and can kind of be the star of the secondary this year for Michigan.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's
seems
fast
like he's on
himself.
track. Yeah, he's.
So.
It's interesting. He didn't have good testing times in high school, and I think
Hmm.
that kept some teams off of him. But
Well,
then he
he's
gets to
ranked a
Michigan,
little
and
lower than you would think.
he had a great offer sheet, but I think a lot of them were early
Yeah.
and then maybe not committable by the end.
Yep.
But then you find out, well, he's had like this nagging glute injury, I think.
Yeah. It was either
Or
glute or hamstring.
yeah, and he kind of got it fixed, at some point in Michigan. And then at one point, they said he ran like in the 4.3s.
4.38. Yep.
Yeah, his hand timed, but like, even if he's
Still.
sub 4.5, whenever he goes to the combine, like, he's
Hmm.
got NFL speed at the position. He's got the technique. He's got he's got enough size. Like, he
Yeah. He's
seems like
excellent
maybe
man to man.
Michigan's next corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my theme. Same thing I went with on offense, and pick kind of a guy for the future. I really like TJ Guy. I thought he looked
He popped.
very, yeah. I thought he popped. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
I thought he looked very, very good in stretches. I think, last year, I believe it was the Maryland game. He had a few plays where he really,
Yeah.
really flashed in that game, but it was really all we got to see from him. And he was an athletic guy in high school, and I don't think he had a senior year due to COVID, and so he kind of came in a little underhyped. He's got a good chance of being a starter next year.
Yeah.
And I think he'll contribute this year. So I was impressed with what I saw from TJ Guy. In terms of a young guy that maybe in the future more so than on this year's defense can help.
Yeah. I'm actually at first I was thinking about going with Mikey, obviously at DB, but I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna go with Brady McGregor. I thought he looked noticeably bigger, especially on the edge, and I thought he was excellent in run defense. He's got some work to do on pass rushing, but I think as the year goes on, he can really develop that tool in his toolbox. But I really liked what I saw from McGregor, the way his body has developed since his freshman year, especially after his ACL injury. I loved his run defense. He was tracking some guys down. I think there was this one play I'd have to go back and watch it for sure. But there's this one play where they ran like a little stretch play. He just ran down Dunlap. Going to the outside. So I thought he looked really good. Another guy who I thought looked really good was Mozzie up the middle. I just thought the interior pass rush was really good. So those were two guys I thought that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think Mozzie's at that level of, like, the coaches and people around the program saying, um, you know, can't stop saying good things about him, to the point where you can just kind of pencil, or write in pen at this point that he's going to have a really good season. So they're counting on him on being the centerpiece of this defense.
Yep.
And then, on the edges, I agree. I think McGregor looks noticeably like bigger and stronger. One
Yeah.
thing I thought just about the edges as a whole, it seems like we've got a lot of strength and size at edge, and
Yep.
what we're going to be missing maybe from last year is the explosion that Ojabo and Hutch had.
Yeah,
And
we're
it's like,
gonna miss
where is that
that.
going to come from? I think Guy is someone that can maybe raise the ceiling there a little bit. Also, Keyshawn Bennett, although I think he's probably another year
Still a year
away.
away. Yeah.
But
You
Guy
think
Guy
Harrell
was
could be that guy?
I think Harrell could be that guy, but I think it's going to be in different
Yeah, he's
packages
an
and different
outstanding run
perspectives.
defender, but he's
Yeah,
he's got a lot left to be desired on the pass rushing side.
but TJ Guy was a point guard for his high school basketball team. You know,
Really?
and some people thought he was maybe an offensive lineman in college. So he's got a pretty unique like size and athleticism combo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't he a possible offensive tackle? How did he go point guard to edge to offensive tackle in college?
Well, I mean, I think he was like 240 in high school, if I'm remembering his recruiting profile correctly. I think
That's
he's like
crazy.
6'5",
Yeah, his junior
240.
year. His junior year, he was like 240. He looked like a string bean out there.
Yeah, because most guys his size would end up being a big man in high school, just because you don't get too many guys that are even over 6'4"
But
in high
yeah,
school.
he can run.
Wow.
He's
Yeah.
just an athletic. So I think, maybe in another year, as Matt said, he can be a
Yeah.
starter that is kind of can approximate more of the explosive like pass rush skill set that we saw last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Harold could do it, but I've mentioned this before, but I think the way we play with our edge defenders, I really think it's three spots. And when we go to nickel, I think Harold kind of gets pulled for one of the the other buck players, kind of the weak side edge in our base 3-4. I think we played two of those in the nickel, or at least we did last year. We pulled Harold a lot when we went to nickel, so I think Harold could provide it in base, but in nickel fronts, it may have to come from maybe a Michael Barrett or a Colson, maybe from different levels than what we got it from last year.
Yeah, I agree. Any last points, Contown, before we move on to our final segment on recruiting?
I do think I'm glad Matt said Michael Barrett. He seems like a guy who
Yeah.
is going to have an expanded role this year and can be just a leader as well. So
He could come off the edge too.
he can come
He
off
looked
the edge.
explosive on that one sack he had.
Yeah. If you remember, one of the only highlights of the 2020 season was his sack that was caused a fumble that
The
was
fumble.
caught and returned by
For the touchdown against
Donovan
Minnesota.
Jeter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we know he's
I
a
remember that.
capable blitzer and he'll have a bigger
When
role
he's a
this year.
great athlete. So he's quarterback in high school, and yeah, he's a really great athlete.
Yeah, I've got one more general point, and then one point I forgot about the offense. They went under center.
They did. That was
We
exciting.
love to see it.
I was
I think
very
that was
pleased.
Weiss.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. They mentioned on the broadcast that the huddling was more for sign stealing purposes. That there'll still be no huddle come fall. I was just very excited, and Harbaugh was on In the Trenches today, and you could just hear in his voice and in just the way he's talking about these guys, like they're talented and they are deep, and he knows it. I mean, he's excited about the season.
He's confident.
He's very confident about the season. Last time he really talked this way was, if you remember, going into the 16 season when we brought like everyone back. Yeah. And we moved, part of that was promoting the Jordan brand and all that. But
yeah,
I think he's just
signing of the stars. He was excited.
Yeah, I think he was very confident that season. And, although it ended up with 3 losses, one being the bowl game, that was a really, 3 losses by around 10 points total. That was a really good.
He lost by 3 to Iowa, lost by 3 to Ohio State, and then lost by 1 to Florida State. So.
It was 4 to Ohio State.
Or was it 4?
And there was 1 to Iowa.
Was it 1? Good Lord.
Yeah, I was at that Iowa game. It was 14-13.
And you were at the Iowa game.
We got out as like they were lining up to kick the winning field goal because we didn't want to be murdered. But it was 13-11, like Michigan 13-11, the most Iowa score, right?
I remember
Iowa
that
got
score being
11.
16-13, but damn, that's crazy.
Iowa got 11 points. So you were doomed. Like if Iowa gets a weird number, you're screwed.
Yeah. Was that the
That's
Devin
true.
Bush targeting game?
Yeah, the
God.
punter
Yeah,
like
got demolished.
self-combusted into
Yeah,
Devin Bush's head, and
yeah,
we got a penalty for it. Yeah.
it's insane.
The same punter that had a punt bounce at a right angle and go out of bounds at the 1 yard line, which set up a safety. Yeah, I mean it was like the most night
For
game
thing.
ever. Yeah.
Winning because of special teams, of course. That's a Ferentz thing to do. All right, let's move on to our final segment. And I want to talk about recruiting a little bit. And this is something that you guys brought up earlier, too, not only on the message board, but this is something that we've been talking about for the past couple months. But coming off of what is probably the best season since maybe 97 or 2006, I would say. It seems like recruiting is lackluster, to say the least, at a lot of positions. I'm not worried about edge or D-line. But man, it really seems like some positions that we could really capitalize on, especially DB, tight end, wide receiver. I mean, I guess offensive tackle, but that's becoming a little bit more clear with some of the guys that's being targeted. But Matt, I know you wanted to touch on this mainly. Talk about some of those, I guess you could say struggles that we see with recruiting right now.
Yeah, I think some of it absolutely. I think there is cause for concern. We mentioned just the other day. We in our little group chat we were talking about if you're not concerned, I don't know what you're looking at. But
yeah,
I do think some of the kind of confusion, I guess, lack of clarity, I guess would be a better way to put it. I think some of that is due to when you completely overhaul the recruiting staff, Tom Gamble, Denard, Albert are all kind of leading that charge now with Courtney Morgan out. So when you completely do that, everyone's getting reevaluated. And then not to mention, you lose both coordinators, although you're staying the same schematically. Those are still new relationships that have to be built. Same thing with guys moving positions. Who Gaddis may have liked at receiver, Ron Bellamy may like a whole different group, and he's got to build a new relationship. They're not doing a ton of cross recruiting right now. So all those things considered, I mean, I think when they get back out on the road here, I believe the eval period opens up tomorrow. When they get back out on the road here, I think there's going to be a little bit more clarity about who the top targets are at each position. And, really this time of year, it seems like Michigan fans always freak out about the class. And usually they do the bulk of their recruiting in May, June, when the summer officials kind of start up. And then last year it was even postseason. They did a bunch in December. So there's still plenty of time. I think the direction will become a little bit more clear overall and at each position. And I think they'll continue to host kids throughout the next couple months, and you'll start to see some momentum pick up on the recruiting trail. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a few more in the boat. But if you think about some of the other programs, I was just looking. LSU just got their third commit yesterday for 2023. So not everyone is Texas Tech with 15 commits right now. It's okay if it starts slow sometimes. I think it'll all work out just fine. But yeah, there's definitely some reasons for concern right now.
Yeah, I was wondering how Texas Tech had the number 2 recruiting class, and I saw that they had 15 recruits or commits. So I was like, yeah, never mind. I see it now.
Yeah, they're like all in state too. I mean, they're taking
3 stars. Yeah.
And it's not that Michigan has a bunch, only 3 commits and they're all 5 stars either. I'm not saying that, but it just sometimes early people freak out about rivals and stuff like that, and it's like just give it time.
There's still time for evaluations and camps. So
yep.
I think the other thing that is like different with this class versus other recent good Michigan recruiting classes is there's not really like a lead, like, a class president, if you will, right? There's not like a leader that is leading from a commit side of things, leading
Like a JJ.
the recruiting charge, like a JJ, like a Will, right? Last year, Will was in the boat
Yeah.
when February, March.
Yeah.
So by this time last year, we had Will, right? By this time, 2 classes ago, we had JJ. We don't really have that. You want a lot of times you want that to be your quarterback, but this class, Michigan is in a very high profile quarterback battle with a 5-star quarterback. Not every 5-star is JJ, where he commits like a year and a half before he signs. So I think just kind of flow wise and structurally, this cycle is going to feel different from the recent successful recruiting cycles that Michigan has had. That doesn't mean it'll end up, worse or significantly worse. It's just a little different. And there's things that are in transition right now that'll get smoothed out over the summer, which Matt said. So it's early to panic, and I think we're in top groups for a lot of really good players. We just have to
absolutely
make that we're finishing. I think the worry right now is that we're going to be always the bridesmaid, never the bride for all these top players we're in. So it's just, I think you'd like to see a little more direction of like, which of those top players you're going to close on, but we're making those top 8, top 3 groups that kids put out. So
yeah, absolutely. I think we're in the top group for guys. Obviously, like Moore, obviously Charles Jagasaw, the offensive tackle from Illinois. It seems like we're up there for Sam Pendleton, although it looks like it's Notre Dame leading the charge right now. But he seems to really like any school that he visits recently. It seems to be his top school coming out of that visit.
Yeah.
Caden Green, probably top 2.
Yeah, Caden Green.
Nick
Nicholas Harbaugh, we
probably.
lead probably for him, or at least second with Maryland.
At least top 2.
I don't know why Maryland is even in that top 2. It's mind-boggling to me. I know he's from the DMV area, but it just doesn't make sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, at this
I don't know if
time,
they have a great track program or something, but yeah.
At this time last year, of the top 10 commits in Michigan's class, Michigan, 2 of them were committed at this time last year. Will
was the other one?
And Cody Jones.
Oh wow! And Cody was wavering too a lot.
Yep, and Tyler Morris committed committed April 20th.
That's right. Yeah.
So he was the 3rd of the top 10. But on April 14th of last year, they had 2 of the top 10 overall guys. Like this is not uncommon territory for Michigan to be in. And more visits here coming up in the next couple months. I think it's really going to get solidified, and they'll likely end up with a good class.
I mean, we're talking that anxiety is coming from what happened last season and just the success of last season. And everybody thinks that we should be recruiting on Alabama's level. It's just like Alabama's not even recruiting on Alabama's level right now. So
yeah,
it's still early, like you said. There are some concerns from me at like who our targets are at certain positions, but overall, I think recruiting will really pick up, like you said, Matt, starting tomorrow when contact period starts back up again.
Yep, Jim Harbaugh, Detroit Martin Luther King, be there.
Yeah. Yes. I know. First school he should go to, so I'm glad he's going there. Any last points?
I just thought it was interesting in the, we don't have to get into the specific recruitment of Dante Moore too much. It's, if you're on the Michigan Insider message board, you've heard a lot about it. If you're a Michigan fan generally, kind of where things stand. But listening to the Michigan Insider recruiting podcast, the most recent episode, something I didn't know, Jim connected King's head coach with a NFL coaching internship.
Yeah,
at the
I didn't
Ravens.
know that either with the Ravens.
So I thought that was pretty cool. Great relationship at King. They've got multiple other Power 5 recruits this cycle as well. Regardless of what happens with Dante Moore, it's Michigan's in a good shape with all the local schools, which I know that was a concern of fans. Under Jim Harbaugh at some point, right? Even as a few years ago. So
Right.
Jim's got great relationships, but then obviously Klink and Bellamy and Mike Hart help with all that too. So
Absolutely.
Michigan's going to be in good shape for the in-state kids that they want.
Ty Spencer played
Spencer, yes.
DB at Wayne State. Just saying, Jay Harbaugh might be getting a head coaching job this coming season. Just throwing that out there. Consider it.
Yeah, I mean, is that allowed? I don't know what the rules are.
He can be a coach. I mean, it's just like what we did with Bellamy.
He can be a coach. He just can't be like what Thomas Wilcher does at Michigan State.
Correct.
He has to be on field. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, he has to be on the field. Yeah.
Just saying, we could need a safety coach next year, and I can't tell you I haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam on the great Sam Webb on the Michigan Insider mentioned that he does think Coach Spencer is next up, like Coach Bellamy, to jump to the college ranks. So
that is exactly why I Googled it. When I heard that on the Michigan Insider Recruiting podcast, I was like, I wonder what position he played. And he was a DB at Wayne State. And I thought, we might need a safeties coach next year.
Might need it, yeah. Jay's ready for the next step. So
Sam doesn't mention
what Jim said.
Doesn't mention things like that unintentionally.
Yeah,
so
unintentionally. Sam always, I don't want to say an agenda, but he always has a reason as to why he says some things. So
yes,
call it
gut feeling. He's purposeful.
So purposeful, yes.
It makes a ton of sense, and that's why Jim's so involved with this recruitment. I think he's not only recruiting Dante, I think he's recruiting somebody else too.
Yeah, Sam sparked the thought in my mind, and I just completed it.
It's a good thought. I didn't even think of that. I didn't even know who Ty Spencer was when you said it. I was like, oh, okay, who's that guy? Oh. But yeah, that's a good note to end on. Hopefully they do get Dante Moore in the fold sometime here in the next couple months. But that does it for this episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Harder, joined by my two guys, Contown and Matt. Be sure to like, subscribe, download this podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. If anything lower than 5 stars, I would expect you to be a Buckeye or Sparty. So everyone have a great night and go Blue.